of justification is the subject of redemption. The main issue of justification, it is the subject of redemption. And the subject of redemption, salvation, deliverance, it's really not, and I'm hoping that as we've gone through these different topics, we're seeing that it's really not what we traditionally imagine it to be or have an opinion of it to be according to the mind that is within the Bible. Justification, just this term, as I've begun this program and throughout, showing the key factors of it, but then also showing what one is to be justified from, and then showing that what that one is, that quote-unquote one, it is not us personally or first primarily, it is our devotional conversation. It is the conscience of our conversation that is to pass through a course of learning entitled Justification. And the leader or the leading course or the leading philosophy, the leading experience of justification, it is called, in our modern terms, if you want to apply it in a modern way, Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ, as applied from the scriptures, or as applied by the mind of the Bible, it is not in reference to a man. Jesus Christ is not a man walking around doing miracles or doing this or doing that. Jesus Christ isn't a personage or a figure. Jesus Christ is not the Son of God, the Father, the this or the that of the this. That's not how the Bible articulates its position. This position that we are familiar with is a position based on Christian theory. Now, Christian theory gets its concept from what is within the Bible, true. But Christian theory fails to take into consideration context and language. From our previous meeting together, seeing, yes, Jesus Christ is ones in the one, also in quotation marks, the conversation. The conversation salvation is through Jesus Christ. But Jesus Christ, as we were seeing and have seen, though we have known Christ after the flesh, know we him no more. And that can be taken two ways, right? That can be taken two ways. Though we have known a particular experience to be flesh-based, though we have known a particular experience to be flesh-based and fulfilled through flesh-based routines and practices, know we that no more. Because there is no flesh-based thing to do anything for. There is, in the second sense, no flesh-based man to acknowledge. So though we have known Christ after the flesh, or should I say, though we have known the individual that has spoken Emmanuel in the flesh, know we him no more. The experience then becomes inward, the experience then becomes mental, and not fixed on an image of an individual or on an idol, but on what the individual spoke. If a man love me, he will keep my words, it says in the book of John. The kingdom of God is within you, it says in the book of Luke. So the way that I'm hoping justification is now being understood changes the context of which it is applied, and it should. Because we're seeing that the Bible would have redemption definitely from two areas. The first area is redemption from everything the Exodus was for. Redemption from everything the Exodus was for. That's the first. And the second, redemption from everything that man's crucified body figuratively represents. Crucified, or the conversation is crucifying what the Exodus stands for and what the figurative image of the living God's chief apostle crucified means. When we can get this down, we can actually understand what justification is about and how to properly go about it. In our previous meeting and episodes prior, Justification is highlighted and pointed out as being a commandment or a law. As being a commandment or a law. Isaiah 51:4. Isaiah 51:4 and 5. Something highlighted before. Isaiah 51 verses 4 and 5. Hearken unto me, my people, and give ear unto me, O my nation. For a law shall proceed from me, and I will make my judgment to rest for a light of the people. My righteousness is near, my salvation is gone forth, and mine arms shall judge the people. The isles shall wait upon me, and on mine arm shall they trust. Now this righteousness that is near, this salvation that is near, this arm to trust, it is that law that is supposed to be a judgment, that is supposed to be a light. The law of redemption is this law of light, is this judgment of light. And this law of redemption is what the living God's chief apostle spoke. And what he spoke, though called Emmanuel, though the name of what he spoke, though the philosophy of what he spoke was called Emmanuel, or we can say was called Jesus Christ. He spoke Jesus Christ. No man was, or the man was not Jesus Christ. Actually, Jesus Christ is a philosophy that was spoken. Emmanuel, Jesus Christ, we can say in modern sense or in Bible sense, this is what the man spoke. And what he spoke was Romans 8:2. The law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. The law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and of death. Now, what the author in the book of Romans is talking about is not natural. The law of the Spirit of life is not something that will liberate naturally the individual human body or the organism from sin and from death. This isn't a natural or an actual or a literal or a physical law that is being spoken. Everything is in context, as the author is putting it, in relation to the devotional or to the religious experience. The law of the Spirit of life is for the conversations, thoughts, and feelings. The law of sin and of death is for the conversations, thoughts, and feelings. When Christ is entered into the conversation, death is imminent. Death exists. Because Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, is a philosophy of regeneration. Regenerating the devotional conversation's conscience to serve and to honor the living God. As it says in the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 9, to purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. This is all about dead works. All about dead works to honor the living God. The issue at hand is dead works. The law of sin and of death is an experience or is a dispensation of dead works. These dead works are what the conversation is supposed to be liberated from. And this liberation comes from applying this law from Isaiah 51:4 and 5 to the conversation's thoughts and feelings. Am I lying? Galatians 3:13. Galatians 3:13. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree. Now the controversy here is not about a man's blood giving anybody life after they've died or right now while they're alive or before their birth or anything of that sort of phenomenal agenda within the Christian theory. The issue here is the conversation's redemption from what is called the philosophy of the religious law. And the way that this conclusion is drawn is that the author is linking what they're saying to what Moses said in the book of Deuteronomy, that he who is hanged is accursed of God. Now, when seeing that individual hanged, what is accursed is the man's flesh, because it is crucified. And according to the author in the book of Galatians, what is accursed, that flesh represents the philosophy of the religious law. When therefore seeing that man crucified, our conversation ought to know that it is free, it is liberated from the construct and from the concept of the philosophy of the religious law. Justification is for change. Justification is for growth. Justification is for well-being. Justification is for sincere devotional maturity. We should care for our faith's character and condition, and how it personally relates to us. Justification is for critical learners. Justification is for mindful thinkers. Justification is for doers of the Bible's words. Thank you for watching Justification. That great light for the people that was promised in Isaiah 51, 4 and 5. That great light to be a judgment. That righteousness that is near. Remember, righteousness is a service. Righteousness is a service. According to the Bible's mind. I'm speaking only according to the Bible's mind. Righteousness is a service. Salvation is a service. Deliverance is a service. Redemption is a service. And the service that these things are connected to is a service of the living God's loving kindness, which we have reviewed before. But the service of the living God's loving kindness is the rescuing of the conversation from the law of sin and of death. 1 Corinthians 15:56 plainly gives us the answer to what the definition of sin and of death is, saying that the strength of law is sin. The strength of law is sin. So when we're seeing the philosophy of the religious law, when we're seeing Christ has redeemed us from the law, it's fair to replace this word law with sin. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of sin. So in a traditional sense, we get that. In a traditional sense, we understand that the traditional figure has liberated from sin. But in a traditional sense, the traditional concept deviates from the actual mind that is within the Bible. Within the Bible, the sin that is the issue, the sin in controversy is not your human being. The sin in controversy is not the construct of your free will. The sin within the Bible, the error within the Bible, because the Bible's main focus is the well-being or the condition of the conversation's conscience, or for the devotional conversation's thoughts and feelings. It is error against the conversation. And from Genesis to Malachi, as it should continue by the living God's chief apostle and what he taught, the issue is the issue against what brings down the conversation. What brings down the conversation? And we don't have to think hard, because the answer, the author of the book of Galatians has done that for us. The answer to what brings down the conversation is to what that crucified flesh represents. That crucified flesh represents sin. To the Bible's mind, the Bible again is focused on the conversation's condition. Primarily, what is erroneous to the conversation's condition, that's on the Bible's mind primarily. That's why the author in the book of Galatians says Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. Because the philosophy of the religious law, which is taking your righteousness, pride, piety, joy, entertainment, fidelity, fortitude, community, fellowship, from baptism's rites, theories, ceremonies, rituals, holy days or holidays, so on and so forth, mixed in with theories and a handwritten prescription from theologians, from experts, and from scholars on such. This is what the Bible calls sin to the conversation. So if our conversation is admitting this into its routine, if our conversation is admitting the theories, the opinions, and the beliefs of handwritten theologians, scholars, or experts on supposedly the Bible, along with their routines and their rituals and their habits, well, the Bible's letting us know that this is the definition of sin, and our conversation from admitting it is a sinful conversation. The Bible does not condemn primarily or initially the human being as being sinful. It is the conversation that is initially, primarily, or firstly sinful to the Bible's mind. Get the conversation right. Stop the conversation from being sinful, and the human being will understand what is decent and what is indecent to its living experience. So this is what the conversation is to be justified from. And Christ is the one that does this. Now, in this context, Christ is not a man. Christ is not a figure. There's no figure that can redeem from the law, because the law and its redemption is inward. That's a psychological thing. That means Christ in context is a psychological application of some sort, which the Bible calls Emmanuel.
I wish you could know what it means. Go through all alone, right where you go.
The conversation is to be redeemed or justified from its use of the philosophy of the religious law. That's issue number one. Issue number two about what the conversation is to be redeemed or delivered from or justified from is its use of idols. Its use of idols. And in the context of 1 Thessalonians 1, 8 and 9. For example, 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, it reads, "For from you sounded out the word of the Lord, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, but also in every place your faith to Godward is spread abroad, so that we need not speak anything. For they themselves show of us what manner of entering in we had unto you, and how you turned to God from idols to serve the living God." Now, in the book of Hebrews, it is written in chapter 9 to purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. That's the role of what the current living will and wisdom of the living God is about for the devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings. Purging the conversation from dead works to serve the living God. These dead works are attached to a dead routine. This dead routine is a routine mixed in with ritual, habit, handwritten religious law. Dead works, handwritten religious law. And the second issue on that, as it says, to purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Well, here in Thessalonians, it says, you turn to God from idols to serve the living God. So the first work, if our conversation is on its proper course to justification, is that we are finding relief and we are being disciplined or trained by the Bible's mind away from honoring the traditional outlet of what is called religion. And we are honoring an experience that is inward. Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. Put off your former conversation and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Constant theme over and over, because this is the issue. Your mind. And not primarily your human mind, but the mind of your personal religious conscience. This is what is to be justified according to the Bible. And step one, or issue one, is the conversation's reliance upon the philosophy of the religious law. Patiently and temperately quit that, and the conversation will find itself aligned with the devotional mind within the Bible, which will in turn edify the human being. Next in line is the idols. If you can manage to turn away from dead works, from a dead ritual labor, from dead acts and deeds, falling back or tracing back to a handwritten religious source for a routine to guide your devotion or your devotional mind, and then also turning from idols. Now, the Christian theory is based off of an idol and has made an idol to turn to. And I spent time going through Paul's understanding, or Paul's philosophy, or I'll say Paul's gospel. I spent time going through Paul's gospel just so that we can see the traces of where that is and where that's going and how Paul got there, because Paul is inventing, or has invented, a demigod. Paul has invented a demigod using Greek mythology, rhetoric, philosophy, and everything congruent with that genre to invent a Jewish Greek demigod. And placing into Hellenistic Judaism his Jewish Greek demigod, he has created two idols, his demigod and then the father of that demigod. And from there, it just takes off into traditional mythological lore that a Greek heritage and a Roman heritage and an Egyptian heritage and a Sumerian heritage should be familiar with. And that's what the Exodus is about, right? The Exodus is about exiting the tradition and the gods of Egypt to personally enter into a solitary appointment with the living God. And Paul's construct is a construct that is Egyptian in nature, which is Greek in nature. And to have the conversation reform from that, well, we will also find, along with reforming from dead works, the kind of alleviation that we are looking for in our devotional experience. Justification is a practical experience. Justification is a very, very practical experience. When you think about how Paul in 2 Thessalonians talks about how in his gospel, Jesus is going to come back with flaming fire, taking vengeance on all those that know not God. If you go to the book of Jude, you actually find out who this attack is against, or is supposed to be against. So let's travel to Jude. Jude 1, 14 and 15, which is taken from the book of Enoch, but Jude 1, 14 and 15, Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches, which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. When we think about this landscape of imagery, the vengeance that is supposed to be executed is a vengeance against those that are doing ungodly deeds and that also have ungodly speech. Now, the definition of ungodliness is what the crucified flesh of the living God's chief apostle represents, which is the philosophy of the religious law. Now, if you look around, whatever type of Jewish denominated religion exists, every single one of those traditions are honoring what was crucified. What was crucified, which is the philosophy of the religious law, which is maintaining a religious or devotional experience by what is handwritten, is ungodly to the Bible's mind, or is the definition of sin. Now, if the figure here is written as coming back to execute vengeance on them that have ungodly deeds, who is this figure going to be executing vengeance against? Just a thought. Because we don't realize how initially misleading our devotional conversations experience is when it is given birth within and given birth to within its own self the ideas and the concepts of the religious world. The religious world and its philosophy is against the mind that is within the scriptures. The judgment that is to be executed, we don't really realize it, but the judgment that is to be executed against the members within the religious world. So our conversations really should not be, if we're going to believe this to be literal, confined to what is within the religious world, because that's the target. Our conversation is conceived within the target. Now we need to realize this. We need to realize this, and we need to understand where redemption or deliverance or salvation, according to the Bible's mind, kicks in. And it kicks in, 1, deeds ungodly through handwritten religious law, and 2, idle, which you can say, hard speeches. Because Paul, in his gospel, is giving a lot of hard speech. A lot of hard speech going against the conscience that is within the scriptures. The very plain conscience that is within the scriptures. So initially, the redemption that we ought to, and we, our conversation, ought to be looking forward to and ought to be engaging and interacting with, is a justification occurring within. The conversation's conscience has to be updated. The conversation's conscience has to go through a period of cleansing. And cleansing, separating from the core of Egypt and separating from the handwritten philosophy of Moses. Not of Moses specifically or generally, but what falls under that category and what mimics it. This is sin to the Bible. And because our conversation's conscience is on the Bible's mind, well, the reformation and the regeneration from these things, it is certain, and it has to be also on our mind.